71 years.
My name is Mattys Art. I am a recent graduate of the University of Dayton.
I'm approaching my 90th birthday in a couple months. I've had just a wonderful 70 years teaching, and eventually came to Mount St. John, and having photography as an interest, and with some proficiency, this began to grow. And here at Mount St. John, we have our own gallery, and enjoying my photography ever since.
I'm 23 years old, and I am just finishing up a year of service with Marianist Pulse, where I've been at Mission of Mary Cooperative, which is a nonprofit urban farm in Dayton, Ohio. So I've been able to kind of combine graphic design and photography with farming, which has been wonderful. So,
What is it meant to be involved in photography?
I find that it's a way, in a wonderful way, to get lost in the subject, to really be engaged with it. And part of that is it engages your whole person. You don't just look at something, but you really see what's there, you perceive, and it can engage your mind and heart. And I find that happens in photography.
one thing in connection with like Marianists and being a lay Marianist myself is presence and listening. And I think like being present, either if you're a person or with a person and photographing a person, you're being present with them and kind of just listening through your perspective of the camera and like what you kind of bring to the table too. And so I think listening and presence also in nature, if you're outside. I love photographing nature and animals and just being quiet and calm and still and just kind of waiting for that awe moment. And I love what you said about like it engages your head and your heart too. And that's what I think photography does, is it moves you, and somehow it makes you think about things in a different way and a different perspective.
For me, this works both with nature, but also with everything. And that is the interdependence, the working together in nature, whether it's living things like the plants and all in the woods, and all that goes on there, or even in the rocks and in scenes, like this one in Bryce Canyon, where it's just a bunch of rocks. And so there's a lot of geology to study the rocks, so that's thrilling. But then you see how all these different elements that were one time at an ocean bed, through all these millions of years, we had sediments of different kinds coming, and now they're like all uncovered. And he said, "My goodness, look at that design, And I didn't have anything to do with it. Just all these elements that work together. And how does that all hold up? Well, some things are eroded away. There's just so much to wonder about and to appreciate. And of course, when you get to the plant life, the things are living and growing. And then when you think of relationship with other human beings, we have so much division in our world today, and it's one world. We see our age is so privileged. When I grew up, now we can see the Earth from somewhere else, from satellite. Oh my gracious! We're meant to be one, and we all have something to say to one. We all influence each other. A whole different outlook on life if we ever get away from our pettiness and saying, well, she looks different or he's different, all that kind of stuff. to look rather at this unity and our call to be one. There's so much in nature that speaks to the same thing.
I agree. And that connection with people too is like you can connect through nature, but also communicate through nature and sharing a certain perspective of like a certain tree or flower or something like that someone might not have seen. And I think like I notice time in nature too a lot more, like as a photographer, like something whether it's a certain flower that's blooming, maybe it won't be blooming tomorrow, and so you can kind of like capture that moment and share that with people that might not have been able to see it, or travel around the world and just show the vastness of nature and just the beauty of it, and the beauty of God's creation is just incredible, and connecting that with people and our relationship with people as well. So with this series, it is in my little herb box at home, and I love color and photography, and I love incorporating nature. And throughout my studies at the University of Dayton and high school, and I've always been drawn to gardening and just farming. I mean, not farming yet, but gardening mainly, and just the production of food, and also how it relates to ecological justice and sustainability, and just how our world is changing based on unsustainable practices. And I wanted to kind of represent that with the beauty of nature and this moss and like old herbs that we're growing, and then bring in some very artificial, this is styrofoam, and bring in very artificial colors and kind of represent like where we might be heading, just with with the world, and so.
Well, when I saw this, what struck me, and I wanted to get in there and look at all these little things, and I'm not a botanist, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's what I loved about it too, because it was so small, but it looked so large. If you really got into on the same level, same plane as the moss and the herbs looked like trees, and they're so small, and it looks like mountains kind of moss, and then just kind of juxtaposing all of this nature is this styrofoam piece of pepper.
Yeah, but that one doesn't grow as well, but...
No, yeah. Yes, it's kind of meant to be jarring, you want to take a second look and be like, what is this? What is this doing here?
Yeah.
This shouldn't be growing here. And kind of the timeliness, too. This is taken at springtime, at home, when we were sent home for COVID, and... just kind of the springtime of the moss and how that's growing, but then also the styrofoam will be in existence for 500 years, And so kind of different time periods, we've talked about time and photography and how there's that one moment where you want to take that photo and that awe, and how it will disappear. And that's kind of the beauty of that piece, because it will be gone, and you can share that with someone, but the other side of it is that some things that we create, like styrofoam or plastics, and that impact that it has on the environment, that will stay. So kind of wanting people to think about that and our ecological imprint on the environment, and how the earth was created by God, and just how beautiful it is, and how much life it's given to us, and how we can kind of like continue that and give that back. So I think that's one of the messages that I try to communicate with like photography and graphic design is care for creation and how beautiful it is. So.
And one of the things that's happening right now with the photography is so vital. Seeing the Colorado River disappearing practically, seeing the fires, seeing all the things that we're responsible for, some degree. So that too, although not beautiful, it has a powerful message to do. Is this the way we want to? Is this what we're going to do to our Earth?
Mm-hmm.
We have people gasping for breath because of the smoke, and, polluted our air, or water, everything. Mm-hmm. It's a strong call to look elsewhere. There's something more. One of my, not just a favorite expression, but one that's very meaningful to me is, you just need to stand in awe. That's what awe is all about. And even though I enjoy looking at my own photograph and all, there's another whole aspect of this awe to it that I appreciate most. And that leads into some, it's really a spiritual experience. It's what contemplation means. No words. You don't need words to describe it. Just stand in awe. It's an important part of the photograph. And it's when that kind of awe hits, that tells me, I think I'll push the button. But give it time. Get engaged with the awesomeness, and that's how you know. Okay, and then you can relive that memory. One of my favorite prayers is, "Thank you, God. You did another great job on this one."
You talk about prayer. Is like photography kind of a way of praying for you? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that whole idea that I mentioned before about engaging me in it, so that my mind doesn't wander, or I'm just here.
Yeah.
And fully engaged with this. And so that's, prayer is so much a matter of being present to the God who's always present to us. Mm-hmm. And I want to always remember that. God's part is always taken care of.
Yes.
Now is my presence to God reciprocal? prayers is, thank you, God. You did another great job on this one.
Aw.